I'm Callen Harper. I'm 32. And the day my sister said, "I just bought my dream house with your credit cards," I didn't scream. I smiled because I'd been preparing for this moment for months. She thought I'd stay quiet, like always. But this time, I brought receipts, and I laid them down in front of the entire family. If you've ever been the one they expected to forgive and forget, this story is for you. Comment if you've ever had to draw a line no one thought you would, and don't forget to subscribe. And most days, I come home to a one-bedroom apartment on the east side of Portland, kick off my work heels, and microwave something forgettable while the city hums just outside my window. I've built a quiet life here. Reliable, efficient, mine. I work as a financial strategist at Evercrest Capital Group. I don't post about it. Don't need anyone to cheer me on. I show up. I solve the problem. I go home. There's comfort in that rhythm. But underneath the neat schedules and clean balance sheets, there's a silence I've never quite been able to shake. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that follows you. Quiet footsteps behind closed doors. And most of that silence sounds like my family. When people ask, I say I have one sister, Sienna. She's 29, photogenic in a way that makes you want to apologize for existing. Her job title changes depending on the week: influencer, brand consultant, wellness advocate, but her energy is always the same: glittery, chaotic, unbothered. People gravitate toward her like moths to a porch light, my parents included. Growing up, the roles were unspoken but understood. I was the stable one, the numbers girl, the helper. She was the dreamer, the one with big plans and no backup. I picked up after her, literally, financially, emotionally, because it was easier than watching her crash. My parents never said it outright, but the message was always there. You're strong, Callen. You'll figure it out. I was 16 when I first heard that line. We were sitting in the kitchen, the tiles cold under my bare feet. My dad was staring at a stack of bank statements. Sienna had failed a summer school course and begged to enroll in a private program with a hefty tuition. "We used some of your college fund," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Just a little. She really needs this. And you, well, you'll find a way." I nodded. What else was I supposed to do? By the time college came, I was working 2 jobs, skipping meals to make tuition, and watching my sister post inspirational quotes about living your truth from coffee shops I couldn't afford to step into. I told myself it was fine, that I was practical, that I didn't need things handed to me. Then came the car. My first big purchase after college, a used sedan. Nothing flashy, but it ran. Sienna borrowed it just for the weekend. 2 days later, it was totaled. My insurance dropped me. "She's going through a hard time," my mother had said, pressing a bus pass into my hand. "Try to be compassionate." So I was. Over and over. Through the boutiques that never opened, the apartments she abandoned, the friendships she scorched on her way to the next obsession. I stayed steady. I kept my job. I paid my bills. I learned how to carry disappointment like a second skin. But lately, something in me has shifted. Not loud, not angry, just still. Like the moment before the storm, when the wind stops moving and the air thickens. I didn't know what it meant yet, only that I was tired of being the steady one in a house built on excuses. And in the stillness, I could feel something coming, something inevitable, like gravity or justice. It was a Monday evening, the kind that blends into all the others, clouds hanging low over Portland, traffic inching past in streaks of red light, and the ache in my arches from another day in heels that weren't designed for walking, just for surviving corporate hallways. I'd barely kicked the door shut behind me when my phone rang. "Sis." The voice practically sparkled, bright, high, breathless with excitement. I didn't need to check the caller ID. Only one person ever greeted me like a TikTok intro. Guess what I just closed on my dream house? I froze with one heel still dangling from my hand. What I mean, it's not technically mine yet. Sienna giggled. But everything's been approved. It's stunning. All natural light and arched doorways, and this Pinterest-perfect kitchen. I saw it and just knew. You know how they say manifestation works? I waited. Oh, and I used your credit cards. Just the main ones. Promise. But don't freak. Mom and Dad said you'd understand. You always do. You're like the chill one. My phone buzzed in my other hand. Then again. And again. Notifications were pouring in like a dam had cracked. Fraud alert, charge alert, limit alert, Sephora, restoration hardware, something called Glow House Interiors, another from Elevate Realty. Every charge is stamped with today's date. All of them mine. She kept talking. You always play it so safe, Cal. And I love that about you. Really. But I've been working so hard on my brand. This space is gonna elevate everything. Like, this house. It's totally a vibe. Honestly. It's time I had something of my own. Something of her own. Funded by me. I lowered myself slowly into the kitchen chair. My laptop still glowed on the table from where I'd left it open this morning. Excel files paused mid-formula. My fingers curled slightly, instinctively, then unclenched. When's the housewarming? I asked. My voice more even than I expected. Somewhere deep beneath the rising static, I heard steel. This Saturday, she squealed. You have to come. I mean, you basically bought it. And then she laughed. That same light, reckless laugh she'd used when she rear-ended my car. When she bailed on her rent and I covered it. When she crashed my 26th birthday party and turned it into a networking event for herself. That laugh had always shielded her from consequences. Until now. She hung up before I could say another word. For a moment, I sat still, surrounded by the low hum of my apartment and the echo of her voice still bouncing through the air like glitter I couldn't quite sweep away. My hands were trembling, but not from panic, not from rage. I wasn't shocked. I was ready. I turned to the laptop and clicked open a folder I hadn't touched in months. I'd labeled it quietly, deliberately. Contingency, Sienna. Inside were dated screenshots, archived voicemails, bank notices flagged as suspicious that I hadn't filed complaints about yet, camera stills from the tiny security device I'd placed in my desk drawer. Her hands rifling through papers, her voice leaving long, rambling messages about needing help just this once. I didn't want to believe she'd do it again. I hadn't wanted to know. But I'd prepared anyway. Because somewhere along the way, between birthday candles and broken promises, I stopped trusting Sienna with anything except damage. The phone buzzed again. Mom. I didn't answer. It buzzed again. A voicemail. I pressed play and listened. Hi, sweetheart. Please don't be upset. Sienna really needed this. Think of it as a gift. Okay. You're so stable. You always land on your feet. The same script. The same exhausted comfort. As if her voice alone could make theft feel like kindness. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then back at the open folder. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was fine. But not in the way they meant. Not the kind of fine that shrugs and signs the check. I reached for a pen and opened a blank document. Not to track what I'd lost, but to list what came next. And just like that, the tide inside me turned. Not with fury, with focus. I sat at the kitchen table, the cursor blinking on a blank document, but my eyes weren't on the screen. They drifted. First to the chipped edge of the ceramic mug in front of me, then further back. Back to moments I'd boxed up long ago and shoved onto mental shelves labeled, "Don't dwell." But they came anyway, one by one. I was 18 the summer it started. My acceptance letter to Stanford had arrived 2 weeks earlier. I still remember holding it, creased at the edges from reading it over and over, the way my hands shook with disbelief. I'd done it. All those AP nights, all the part-time shifts after school, they'd led to that one envelope. I was supposed to start in the fall. But then, one morning, Mom called me into the living room. She had that overly soft tone she reserved for bad news. She wanted to sound like kindness. Dad sat stiffly beside her, pretending to read a bill that had nothing to do with me. I knew something was wrong before she said it. We had to help Sienna with her boutique. Mom said, she's finally serious about something. Callen. And she's passionate. That counts for a lot. My mouth had opened, but no words came. Dad chimed in like he was offering reassurance. You're so good with numbers. Cal, you'll figure it out. And I did. I declined Stanford, chose a state school instead, picked up 2 jobs, ate canned soup until I could barely stand the smell of it. I paid my own tuition, semester by semester, spreadsheet by spreadsheet. Sienna's boutique closed within 6 months. No one brought it up again. Then came the car. It took me 3 years after graduation to save for something reliable. A gently used Toyota Corolla with no bells or whistles, just enough to get me to and from work without praying on every turn. I'd only had it a week when Sienna asked to borrow it for a wellness retreat she was filming. She brought it back 2 days later on a tow truck. The other driver was totally at fault, she said through tears, eyeliner streaked from stress. Not sadness. But at least I'm okay. That's what matters. Right? My insurance didn't cover the full claim. And when they found out she wasn't on the policy, they dropped me. Dad handed me a monthly bus pass and said, try to be compassionate. She's going through a rough patch. She was always going through a rough patch. And I was always expected to patch over it. The pattern continued. Apartment leases signed in my name, phones borrowed and never returned, small debts that snowballed, always wrapped in apologies that sounded like compliments. You're so grounded, Cal. I wish I had your stability. Or, we just need your help this once. You're the only one who can handle it. I believed that lie for years. That being the strong one meant carrying the weight, and that loving your family meant absorbing the hits in silence. That's what they taught me. That's what I practiced. If I didn't yell, if I didn't push back, then somehow I was better. Good. But silence isn't goodness. It's not kindness. It's just room for others to fill with their wants, their chaos. And now they'd filled it with $48,000 worth of curated furniture and designer candles. I looked down at the blinking cursor again, then started typing. A list. Not of feelings. Those came later. This was a list of events, dates, bank charges, screenshots. The hard proof that, for years, I'd been a silent participant in my own erasure. But not this time. This time, the silence wasn't a compromise. It was a strategy. It was precision. A kind of cold clarity that only comes after the last apology dries up. A line had been crossed, and I was no longer on the side of forgiveness. I was on the side of fact. And facts don't flinch. The first thing I bought wasn't a lawyer, or a new lock, or a bottle of wine to cry into. It was a camera. Small, discreet. One of those motion-triggered models you can tuck inside a bookshelf, or the hollow base of a desk lamp. I installed it in my apartment the next evening, right above the drawer where I kept my personal documents. The same drawer I'd found slightly ajar 2 months earlier. I'd brushed it off at the time. Maybe I'd left it open. Maybe the cleaning crew nudged it. But now, I knew better. You stop giving people the benefit of the doubt when the costs start showing up on your credit report. From that moment on, I started archiving everything. Not because I wanted to destroy her, not at first, but I needed to stop questioning myself. Gaslighting doesn't always come in grand gestures. It comes in smiles and phrases like, "You're just overthinking," or Don't be so rigid, Callen. Not everything's black and white. So I made it black and white. I created a new folder, separate from the contingency one, labeled simply Truth, and in it, I began collecting every trace Sienna left behind. Voicemails saved, her voice lilting through the speaker, asking for help with rent, with a business loan, with just a small bridge amount until her brand took off. Screenshots of text messages. Only you understand me. She'd write, right before asking for another favor. Each message read more like a transaction than a conversation. Then there were the emails. The ones from Mom always padded in emotional language, always suggesting that my boundaries were too sharp. I know it's frustrating, sweetie, but Sienna's not as strong as you. You've always been the anchor. Don't let this one thing shake the boat, or she's trying. You don't want to crush that momentum. Do you crush it? It was built on my spine. I began categorizing everything: timestamps, dates, file names. I treated it like any other financial audit. Except this time, the theft wasn't numbers on a spreadsheet. It was trust. And no one but me seemed to think that counted. I didn't tell anyone, not friends, not coworkers, not even my therapist. I wasn't ready to hear. That's extreme. Or worse. Are you sure I was done seeking validation for boundaries I should have never had to justify? The camera footage came in 2 weeks later. A clip that lasted no more than 30 seconds. Sienna, in my apartment, using a key she wasn't supposed to have anymore. She opened the drawer like she owned it, flipped through my folders, found my wallet, smiled at something, probably the gold card I hadn't used in months, and left. She never looked at the camera, never even paused. I saved the file twice, once to an encrypted drive, once to a flash drive I kept at the office. I'd spent years wondering if I was being too harsh, too closed off, too unwilling to be there for the family. But the camera didn't lie. The screenshots didn't lie. The late-night emails from Sienna's Venmo requests didn't lie. Feelings can be manipulated, but evidence speaks in complete sentences. And slowly, the story began to shift. I wasn't the overreactive sister anymore. I wasn't the distant daughter. I was the historian, the one keeping the record that no one else wanted to admit existed. What I was building wasn't revenge. It wasn't even anger. It was proof. And proof has power. The clip of Sienna in my apartment, the ease with which she moved through my space, the entitlement in her smile as she held my gold card up to the light, stayed frozen on my laptop screen long after I'd hit pause. I stared at it until the frame felt branded into my memory, not because I needed proof anymore, but because it reminded me of the truth I'd known for years but hadn't said aloud. Sienna didn't just borrow, she believed she was owed. That truth followed me back to work the next morning, into the glass and marble lobby of Evercrest Capital Group. While the espresso machine hissed and analysts discussed projections over stale muffins, I sat at my desk and did what I did best. I ran numbers, but not for a client, for her. I searched the property records she'd mentioned in her call, details she'd spilled too casually, too confidently. A street name here, a developer's brand there. It wasn't hard. Influencers document everything, even their crimes. When the address popped up, I froze. It was a new build. Clean lines, vaulted ceilings, natural stone finishes. The listing was filled with buzzwords like organic luxury and mindful architecture. But that wasn't what caught my eye. What caught my eye was the development code at the bottom. I recognized it immediately. Phase 3. Juniper Ridge. A subdivision I'd worked on in my first year at Evercrest. Back then, I was just another analyst on a crowded team, running zoning projections and permit timelines for a long-shot investment proposal. Most of my co-workers forgot about it once funding shifted and Evercrest sold off part of the stake. But I hadn't. I'd stayed in touch with the regional property manager. I knew the gaps in the paperwork, knew which parcels had liens attached, knew which permits were still pending, and which ones could stall a closing if certain facts came to light. Sienna's dream house sat on soil I'd helped vet. It wasn't just poetic, it was practical. She thought she'd pulled one over on me, that she'd stolen a future I hadn't yet built. But what she didn't know was that the very ground beneath her white oak floors came with strings I still held. I pulled up internal reports from the archive, details only Evercrest employees had access to, not confidential but complex, technical. The kind of red tape that confuses people who've never had to read fine print. And Sienna. She didn't do fine print. She lived headline to headline. The mortgage, the permits, the insurance disclosures. Every thread in her new life was tied to systems I understood better than she ever could. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something stir beneath the weight of everything she'd taken. Not grief, not rage, leverage. The kind built not on shouting, but on silence, on documentation, on being underestimated long enough to study all the angles while no one's watching. I clicked through the documents slowly, highlighting inconsistencies, flagging timing issues. The house might look perfect on Instagram, but on paper, it was vulnerable. And so was she. I sat back in my chair, letting the screen glow in front of me. The irony wasn't lost on me. How the girl who'd mocked my job for being too corporate had staked her identity on a house financed by cards she didn't own, built on land I'd once helped underwrite. She called it her fresh start, her manifestation, her moment. But the foundation was mine, and I was ready to shake it. 2 days after confirming the development records, my phone lit up again. Dad calling. I let it ring twice before answering. My voice is steady, almost warm. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, as if this were an ordinary check-in, like we talked every week. We didn't. "Listen, there's just one small thing we need from you. Nothing big. Just paperwork." I didn't respond. I let the silence stretch. He cleared his throat. "It's about Sienna's house. The lender is asking for a refinance signature to streamline the paperwork. You're technically tied to some of the credit lines used in the purchase, so it just makes things cleaner. Just a signature, cleaner." That word sat in my ear like smoke, as if all of this, the break-in, the theft, the assumption I'd nod along, could be tidied up with a pen stroke. "You've always made things easier. Cal," he added, the same familiar script, dusted off and reused. "You smooth things over better than anyone." I could hear my mother in the background. Her voice, soft but insistent, slid through the speaker. "Tell her it's just a formality, that we'll have the paperwork ready at the party. Oh, and remind her to be early. It would mean a lot to Sienna." Then she spoke directly into the phone. "Callen, honey, can you just support her quietly for once? She's under so much pressure right now with the move, the attention online, the sponsorships. This would really help." There it was, that subtle inversion again. The idea that I was the one causing friction. Not signing meant I was choosing chaos. That agreeing yet again to clean up after my sister's mess would somehow make me the hero in a family that only applauded Sienna's stories. I looked out the window of my office. The glass reflected the skyline, soft with fog. Downtown Portland looked peaceful, predictable, structured, exactly how I'd built my life. And in that quiet, I smiled. "Of course," I said gently. "I'll bring everything to the housewarming." A beat of relief came through the line. "Oh, good." My mother exhaled. "We'll have the papers printed and ready. I knew we could count on you." I ended the call politely, professionally, like someone who had no intention of raising her voice, only her standards. They had no idea what I was actually bringing. No idea that I already had 2 signed letters from the development's property manager, that I'd secured the timestamps on the security footage, That my company's compliance officer had confirmed my legal distance from the mortgage deal and quietly suggested I get personal counsel just to be safe. I had everything lined up, labeled, cross referenced, color coded. They thought I'd show up to celebrate, but I was showing up to collect. They believed I'd come with a signature. I was coming with the truth. They thought I was coming to keep the peace, but I was coming to the end of the performance. The next morning, I called Diana Whitmore, a real estate attorney whose firm had handled multiple development contracts at Evercrest. She wasn't flashy, didn't posture, just asked short, direct questions and took precise notes. When I told her what happened, she didn't blink. "Do you have documentation?" she asked. "I do." We met at her office that afternoon. I handed her a flash drive. She plugged it in, scanned the contents, time-stamped camera footage, screenshots of my credit card statements, all charges within a 24-hour window, all matching the purchases Sienna had flaunted online, email threads from my parents, some pleading, some quietly manipulative, and a full financial breakdown of the Juniper Ridge development, marked with the exact parcel number of Sienna's new house and the estimated equity shift if fraud was confirmed. When she finished reading, she looked up. "You've built a case stronger than most civil suits I see in court," she said. "You don't need to yell. You just need to hand this over." That evening, I met with compliance at Evercrest, off the record. I made it clear I was acting in a personal capacity. They reviewed the development ties, confirmed I had no public affiliation with the deal, and quietly advised me to protect myself in writing should Sienna or anyone attempt to involve me in post-transaction obligations. By Thursday, everything was printed. The footage stills, each one with a timestamp and her face clearly in frame. The statement from the property manager, notarized and signed, confirming the purchase was made with cards not registered to the buyer. The emails from my parents, carefully highlighted. The Instagram screenshots with captions like, "Proof that if you leap, the universe catches you." The purchase receipts that showed the universe was actually my Amex. I printed in color, sorted by category, labeled each section with index tabs, not because I wanted drama, but because when the curtain finally dropped, I wanted there to be no room for questions, only facts. Then I prepared the envelope, heavy, legal-sized, cream-colored. I slid the final packet inside and sealed it with both palms. Not with anger, not with vengeance, just with clarity. This wasn't revenge. This was the closing of a file. The kind of file you keep in a locked drawer for too long, because you're hoping, praying, that the person on the other end will realize what they're doing and stop before you have to act. But Sienna never stopped, and neither did the people who kept covering for her. So now, I was done covering. I placed the envelope into my work tote, right beside a smaller folder with the repayment contract I'd drafted with Diana. Clean terms, clear deadlines, legal consequences. Sienna wouldn't go to jail unless she chose it, but she would return what she took. All of it. As I zipped the bag closed, I checked the time. 48 hours until the housewarming. 2 more days until the final performance. And I was walking on stage with the script they never thought I'd write. The house smelled like new paint and expensive candles, notes of bergamot and something vaguely herbal, probably designed to whisper serenity to every guest walking through the door. Music played low through hidden speakers, the kind of playlist curated to make everything feel effortless, the kind that masked tension, if you weren't listening closely. I stepped inside precisely on time, wearing slate gray and quiet heels, my tote bag resting on one shoulder like any other workday. Around me, the party swirled, guests in pastel linens holding slender glasses of sparkling wine, murmuring compliments about the natural light, the arched doorways, the color palette that was so Sienna. And there she was, exactly as I knew she would be, floating across the marble floors in a silk wrap dress, all soft waves and radiant skin, as if she'd just stepped out of an ad for the very lifestyle she had stolen. Her smile widened the moment she saw me, arms outstretched like nothing had happened. "Callen, you made it," she said, pulling me into a hug I didn't return. "Isn't it amazing? It's everything I ever dreamed of. And honestly, you're kind of the reason it happened." She grinned, like it was a compliment, like I should be honored. "Then I guess it's only right," I said evenly, "that I brought a housewarming gift." Her eyes sparkled. "You didn't have to, I mean, technically. You already did." She laughed, light and familiar, the laugh that once diffused consequences like incense smoke. "Come see the upstairs bathroom. It's giving spa energy." I shook my head gently and motioned toward the kitchen instead. "No need. I think this is something the whole family should see." The tone in my voice changed the air around us. Just enough. Sienna blinked. "What do you mean?" I turned to where our parents stood near the dining table, already halfway into their second round of champagne. "Mom, Dad, can I borrow you for a moment?" They exchanged a look. They recognized that tone. Not angry, not cold, just final. It was the same tone I used when I told them I'd be funding my own education, when I stopped covering for missed rent payments. When I learned silence wasn't synonymous with forgiveness, guests turned subtly, curious. The music kept playing, but conversation began to dip in volume. I stepped to the center island in the kitchen and placed the envelope carefully on the marble counter. I didn't rush. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "Sienna," I said, "since you're so big on sharing your blessings lately, I thought I'd share a few things too. A little balance. A little truth." She looked confused, then uncertain, then something close to afraid. I opened the envelope and pulled out the first page, a color print of the security footage still. Sienna, in my apartment, her hand on my desk drawer, my wallet in clear view. Gasps echoed softly from someone near the hors d'oeuvres table. I laid it flat. Next came the credit card statements, each one marked, highlighted, dated, totaling $48,000, all within one 24-hour period. Then came the emails from Mom. Phrases underlined in red. "She's under pressure. Don't be so rigid. Callen, you always find a way." Finally, I pulled out the notarized statement from the property manager, confirming the buyer's name, the credit origin, and the pending permit issues. I placed it gently on top of the others. "This," I said, "is what you built your dream house on." My father's mouth parted, then closed. My mother's hand trembled around her glass. And Sienna. She stared at the papers like they were written in a language she'd never bothered to learn. "You're joking," she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "I'm finally serious." No one moved. No one laughed. And for the first time in her curated, filtered, soft-lit world, the spotlight wasn't on Sienna's charm, it was on her truth. For a moment, no one spoke. The scent of citrus candles still lingered in the air, but the sweetness had turned stale. Around the kitchen island, heads craned in cautious disbelief, guests who had come for wine and charcuterie now standing motionless as if the air itself had thickened. I reached back into the envelope and unfolded the next page. "This is the full statement from my Amex account," I said calmly. "Every transaction you see here was charged within a single 24-hour period, totaling $48,000. Furniture, fixtures, closing fees. It matches, item for item. The post Sienna shared this week on Instagram." I flipped to the screenshots. One with Sienna twirling barefoot on her hardwood floors, another with her standing on the porch in a silk robe, coffee mug raised, captioned, Manifestation works. The likes were in the thousands. The tags listed brands I'd never even heard of. She didn't manifest this, I said. She stole it. I turned to the next section. These are emails from our parents. Some recent, some years old. All of them framed in concern, but each one quietly suggesting I absorb just a little more, bend a little farther, make space for one more mess that wasn't mine. I met my mother's eyes. She didn't look away, but she didn't reach for the pages either. And this, I said, pulling the last sheet forward, is a legal analysis from a licensed real estate attorney. Based on the evidence presented, Sienna's actions meet multiple criminal thresholds: credit card fraud, identity theft, unlawful entry into a private residence, and the misuse of funds during a real estate transaction. A hush fell again, deeper this time. The music still played faintly in the background. Someone had forgotten to turn it off, but it felt intrusive now, artificial, like a soundtrack that no longer matched the scene. I looked at Sienna. Her face had gone from disbelief to something colder. Stillness, like her mind was racing, calculating every possible exit at once. "You could have come to me," she said finally. "You didn't have to do this in front of everyone." I tilted my head. "I did come to you. Every time you took something and I said nothing. That was me coming to you. Hoping you'd stop. Hoping you'd see." Her mouth opened, but no words came. "This isn't about revenge," I continued. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "This is about boundaries. The ones you crossed. The ones Mom and Dad helped you cross. And the ones I'm drawing now." I laid one final sheet on the table. A repayment agreement. Simple, specific, legally binding. It didn't ask for punishment, only restitution. "You have two choices," I said. "You sign this, agree to pay back every dollar, plus interest, or I hand this entire file to the police, including the surveillance video and the forged documents." Sienna's hands hovered near the papers, but she didn't touch them. "I thought we were family," she whispered. I nodded. "That's what made it so easy for you." Around us, the room remained silent. No one reached for a refill. No one joked to ease the tension. For the first time, there was no audience for Sienna to perform to, just the truth, and the consequences it finally brought with it. Sienna didn't reach for the repayment contract. Instead, with a sudden shift in her expression, part desperation, part calculation, she pulled out a folder of her own from beneath the kitchen counter. As if she'd prepared for this moment, too. As if she still believed she had the upper hand. "I have something to add," she said, her voice sharper now, more performative. She slid the folder across the marble counter toward me. "Before we go any further." Inside was a photocopy of a document bearing my name. A contract, dated 6 years ago, with a crude but familiar signature scrawled across the bottom. "This is an agreement," she declared, "that you signed, stating you would financially support my business ventures. That includes the house. It's not theft. It's fulfillment of your promise." My father shifted his weight behind her. My mother's arms crossed tightly, as if bracing for impact. I didn't react. I simply glanced at the document, then handed it to Diana, my attorney, who had been waiting silently near the kitchen island. She studied the page for 5 seconds, then turned her laptop toward the group. "Show them," I said quietly. On the screen was grainy footage, a fixed angle from the camera I'd installed in my apartment 6 months earlier. It showed Sienna seated at my desk, printing out a blank form, holding it up to the light, then slowly tracing a signature, my signature, line after line until the curve matched. She practiced it 8 times. No one moved. "She forged my name," I said calmly, turning to Sienna. And now, by attempting to use that forgery to influence a legal transaction, she's adding attempted fraud to the list. Sienna's face drained of color. The last traces of confidence slipped behind her eyes, replaced by something raw, something unprepared. Diana placed the original repayment contract back on the counter and slid it forward. "This is your choice," I said. "Sign it and agree to repayment with terms we control. Or we take this to court, and the decision will be made for you. Publicly. Permanently." The room held its breath. Sienna stood frozen, eyes flicking to Mom, then to Dad, then back to the document. For years, she had been the one who twisted the narrative, who found a soft place to land, usually in someone else's lap. But this time, there was no cushioning, just the weight of what she'd done, and the silence of the people who'd always protected her. My father exhaled through his nose, louder than necessary. "Sign it," he said, his voice low and tight. Sienna looked at him in disbelief. "What?" "You heard me," he said, without flinching. "This is done. Sign the papers." Sign. Her lower lip quivered, not from grief, but shock. She had expected another defense, another lifeline. It never came. Even my mother stayed quiet, her hands pressed flat on the kitchen island, her eyes pinned to the granite. Sienna turned back to the contract. She picked up the pen. Her signature was messy, hesitant, almost reluctant, as if each stroke was a crack in the armor she'd worn for so long. But it was real. When she finished, Diana reached across and notarized the final page, initials smooth and unshaken, legally binding, irreversible. I took a slow breath. It was over. Not with a scream, not with a breakdown, but with the clean click of a pen on paper. No one applauded. No one embraced. We all just stood there in the silence of a truth finally made official. It's been a year. 12 months since Sienna signed her name on that countertop in front of the people who once would have bent time itself to keep her from facing the consequences. 12 months since the weight shifted. Off my shoulders, off my bank account, and off the stories they used to tell about who I was supposed to be. She didn't go to jail. I never filed criminal charges, not because she didn't deserve it, but because the contract did what jail never could. Held her accountable, every single month, in silence. No spectacle, no headlines, just a quiet transfer of funds, like clockwork. The money arrives on the 15th, not late, not early, just consistent. A line item on my statement titled, "Restitution, S.H." The influencer life is gone. The curated content, the brand deals, the manifest your dreams captions, deleted. Her Instagram now reads like a completely different person. Photos of spreadsheets beside coffee mugs. Lighting that looks accidental instead of filtered. Captions like "budgeting is self-respect" or "financial literacy is healing." Sometimes I wonder if she believes any of it. Or if she's just performing again, this time for a different audience. But then I remember, even pretending in the right direction is better than pretending in the wrong one. At least now the mask reflects something closer to truth. She works at a small marketing firm downtown. Entry level, desk job, no spotlights, no hashtags, just structure, routine, a paycheck earned, not borrowed. As for my parents, the silence didn't last forever. 3 months after the signing, Dad called me. He didn't open with excuses, didn't ask for anything. He just said, "I'm sorry," followed by, "I've started seeing a therapist." Then came the part that stuck. "I think maybe we failed both of you, just in different ways. It wasn't everything, but it was something. Mom never called, but last month, she left a voicemail. Her voice was tired, Not sharp like it used to be when defending Sienna, not coated in guilt, just tired in that deep, worn-out way that grief makes people. Grief for the lies, for the damage, for the part she played. You were right, she said. She needed to fall. And we never let her. That's on us. I saved the message. I haven't replied. Sometimes healing doesn't come through long conversations or family meetings. Sometimes it comes in a single sentence that finally admits the truth, and the space you're allowed to keep afterward. I don't see Sienna much anymore. We don't talk, except for the automatic emails confirming her monthly transfers. They're short, clean, once. She wrote, "Paid early this month." No emojis, no excuses. I replied with 2 words, "Received." Thank you. That's our rhythm now. Professional, distant, boundaried. And for the first time in my life, I'm okay with that. Because I've learned that peace doesn't always mean repair. Sometimes, peace just means release. The house sold in early spring, just before the cherry blossoms opened along the sidewalks near Juniper Ridge. A young couple bought it, first-time homeowners, all wide eyes and soft laughter, the kind of people who still believed in open floor plans and clean slates. I left the welcome packet on the kitchen counter, along with a handwritten note. May this home hold more honesty than mine ever did. The sale covered every outstanding balance, legal fees, recovery costs, even the late interest Sienna once said I was too rigid to charge. I didn't keep the rest. I put it toward a down payment on a condo closer to the center of the city. Smaller, sunlit, quiet. No shared walls, no memories I had to scrub out of the corners. There are no hidden cameras here, no contingency folders, no need to keep my wallet locked in a drawer. I don't check my statements twice a day. I don't sleep with one ear open anymore. I don't wait for betrayal like it's part of the morning routine. Because for the first time in over a decade, I'm not living in defense of what might be taken next. I'm just living. The promotion came last quarter. Vice President of Strategic Finance. My boss said it was for clear judgment under pressure and composure in complex situations. I almost laughed. I didn't tell him the conflict he was referring to wore my last name. Sienna's messages still arrive once a month, one-line confirmations of each transfer. Clean, time to the hour. Her last note simply read, "Paid in full through May." I responded, "Confirmed. Take care. No more, no less." We don't follow each other online. There are no birthday texts, no holiday greetings, just boundaries. Firm, silent, working exactly as they should. Dinner with my parents happens sometimes. Not often. Just enough. We talk about the weather, books we haven't finished, what therapy is teaching them. We don't talk about the contract, or the house, or the years we spent pretending love meant never saying no. But I sleep well now. Not because everything has been mended, but because I no longer have to manage the illusion of closeness. I don't walk into rooms bracing for what might be taken. I walk forward, unburdened, and finally, free. If you've ever had to choose peace over pleasing people, if you've ever reclaimed what was taken from you quietly, tell me in the comments. I'd love to know how you drew your line. And if this story stayed with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Because sometimes, the best revenge is never having to look over your shoulder again.